Hello there. Welcome to the Scruffy Looking Nerdhers podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, bringing you news on all things nerd and geek related. This week, I'll be covering Wizards of the Coast, Overwatch, Star Wars, comic books, and more. So, here we go. First up, I have some housekeeping for you. I will be at VisionCon in Springfield, Missouri next month, May 10th and 11th. I've been scoping out some of the local places to eat and hang out afterwards. I think I'm going to probably hit up Sliders in downtown and hang at 1984 and do some old school gaming on some cabinets. So, if you're going to be going, let me know and we can hang. Second and lastly in housekeeping, I have another potential guest lined up for the podcast, but it won't be until after November. So, that's something that I can't wait for. But the first guest will be a live interview / hangout next month on Twitch, and I will be releasing more info once I'm able to finalize a day that works for both of us. So first up on the gaming report, this one is one that I couldn't not talk about. So Dungeons & Dragons company Wizards of the Coast announced that it is opening a new studio in Austin, Texas that will be led by former BioWare alumni James Olin. Olin left BioWare last year after 22 years with the company, and during that time, he had a hand in designing and writing the Baldur's Gate series, Neverwinter Nights, Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, and Dragon Age Origins. Olin went on to say, "I didn't think that I would be coming back to the game industry so soon, but working with Wizards is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Our mutual love of RPGs, world building, and interactive storytelling is a perfect match." Now, it's not entirely clear as of yet what they will be working on, but a rep from the company said that it will be a quote-unquote multimedia studio with freedom to develop different expressions. A little disappointing news is that it will not be a D&D project. Wizards of the Coast said that the studio will focus on the creation of original IPs outside of their Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons brands. Some online are already theorizing that it will be related to Odyssey of the Dragonlords, which is an epic adventure book in the works at Arcanum Worlds. That company launched a Kickstarter to support the book on April 16th in hopes of getting a minimum $50,000. After a little over a week, it's already almost quadrupled that original asking amount, so definitely going to get funded. So whether this studio works on video games or comics, animation, or even just more tabletop stuff, I'm most likely going to end up supporting it. Olin created so many of the RPGs that have influenced not just so many others in the industry, but my personal creative outlets over the years. Baldur's Gate was one of the first RPGs that I played on PC, and I have always loved the Forgotten Realms setting and the books, and to be able to play a video game of it was like a dream come true. And the same could be said about Neverwinter Nights. I loved those games and easily sunk hundreds of hours into them. And I mean, honestly, all of the games that Olin had a hand in creating at BioWare were that way for me. I could get so lost in them so easily, and they never got old. I probably played the first Dragon Age at least 6 different times and completed every single side quest each time. But I've also been wondering, since the success of the Critical Role animation Kickstarter, if companies are going to realize and finally wake up that fantasy or high fantasy still has a market as long as they know their demographic. Because I'd love to see Wizards of the Coast work on some official animations for Netflix or Hulu. Because if they were smart, they'd get to work on that. Because Critical Role made millions of dollars just off of a Kickstarter campaign. So they could easily resurrect the Dungeons & Dragons animation. Just don't make it goofy. Make it actually cool. Or do a Forgotten Realms one. That'd be even better. Number 2 on the gaming report. Blizzard announced April 24th in a blog post on the company's website that they are now introducing what they're calling the Overwatch Workshop. The blog post goes on to say, the workshop is a simplified game scripting system that expands the customization features available in the game browser. Within the workshop, you'll create a script to add rules and unique play conditions on top of the established Overwatch game modes you already know and love. Rules can do many things, like change how a hero's movement and abilities work, modify how players are damaged or healed, or even display text under certain circumstances. One hot game mode you can create is Molten Floor, where your hero will catch on fire if they're on the ground. And then it goes on to give you step-by-step instructions on how to go about creating custom stuff in the workshop. So this is interesting for me due to the fact that it's kind of been apparent that this game is slowly but surely kind of dying. The player base has dropped a little bit. Overwatch League still seems to be doing okay, but I have noticed with each patch that nerfs or buffs characters, it really seems to split the fan base. And this workshop kind of seems like a great idea to get the community involved and active again, and creating some content that they can share with others within the community. Looking through the comments though on the blog and on Twitter and Facebook, it seems the two biggest requests that I kept seeing over and over were, one, a map editor, and two, the ability to do PvE events, which, I'm going to be honest, I don't know why Blizzard wouldn't do either of those. One of the things that would really bring back a spark into the community would be the ability to do PvE events whenever people wanted to. I know in the last little bit of me playing Overwatch relatively frequently, I really just wanted to do PvE matches. I lost all my interest in doing PvP, especially once Smurf accounts became the new norm and Blizzard was kind of just like whatever about Smurf accounts. But maybe this will be the first step in the right direction on mending the broken relationship between Blizzard and its community, because Lord knows that Diablo didn't help. And lastly, on the gaming report, this is half gaming, half comic book kind of related, so it'll be kind of a good segue. But even though Ubisoft won't be releasing any new Assassin's Creed games this year, they will be releasing a new graphic novel based on the series. Assassin's Creed The Fall and the Chain, coming from Titan Comics, is expected to hit comic shelves this fall, and it takes the franchise to a relatively new setting, Russia. If you're unfamiliar, Ubisoft published a series of Assassin's Creed games developed by Climax Studios that were titled Assassin's Creed Chronicles, and they were China, India, and the final installment was Russia. So this graphic novel will be following a new assassin, Daniel Cross, who through hallucinations will be able to experience the past life of a Russian assassin named Nikolai Orlov and his son, Innokinti. I probably butchered that, but the Chronicles game set in Russia also followed Orlov, so it'll be interesting to see if they follow the same story arc or if this graphic novel will be a different story altogether. The Fall in the Chain is being helmed by Cameron Stewart, who did Fight Club comics, and Carl Kerschel, who did Robotech. It's scheduled for release in October of 2019 and will be available digitally and at your local comic shops. For more information, check out titan-comics.com. So, segueing from that comic book news, I have a pretty big news piece. So DC Universe, the official DC streaming service, announced on Tuesday that over 20,000 comics are now available to read on the platform. That's insane. The comics will span the publisher's entire 80-year history. New issues will arrive each month following a 12-month delay from their print publication. So you'll have to wait a year after release to be able to read them, but that's a lot of comics to be reading. Members will be able to download comics for offline reading, use bookmarks, zoom in, and even autoplay the page turning, which is super handy. It's more handy than you think. The addition of this full library will not affect the price of DC Universe, which is currently only $7.99 a month. On top of the comic library, the online service also has its live-action shows like Titans and Doom Patrol, along with animated shows like Teen Titans and Young Justice, to name a few. I was never really a huge DC Comics fan. I liked the New 52 Flash run, and I really enjoyed The Legend of Wonder Woman, which was basically a reimagined origin of her Golden Age comics. It was written and drawn by Renee DeLiz, and her husband did the inks and the colors for it. It was an extremely well done comic series, and unfortunately, even though it was very popular, DC canceled the second series that was planned for it. At that time, they had, I think, 3 different variations of kind of the same storyline going on. They just kind of canceled the 2 that were the least popular. Unfortunately, it was this one, but I much preferred this one over the other. But even though I'm not a huge fan of DC Comics, $8 a month is chump change for over 20,000 comics to read, and more being released each month. So if you or someone you know is a DC or even just a comic book fan, this may be a gift worth giving them. So keep that in mind. It's $8 a month. So I kind of talked about it last week and probably the week before that and the week before that. So this week, though, is the finale of an 11-year build-up, Avengers Endgame. So like I said last week, be careful out there with spoilers, because there's apparently a full leaked copy of the movie floating around on the internet, and I've almost been tricked into seeing stuff like how Facebook autoplays. People were doing meme videos, and in one of the videos I was scrolling through, it was like a normal meme type video, and then it cut to a scene from a bootleg copy of Avengers Endgame. So people are a-holes, and I almost saw stuff. So be careful out there. I'm going to go see it Friday night, so I'm going to be staying off of social medias after I post this episode on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And after that, I'm staying off until I see the movie. So I highly recommend you do it as well. But one thing that the MCU is definitely known for is their post-credit scenes that usually tell mini stories or tease future events or just kind of nods to different things throughout the Marvel comics. Literally every MCU movie to date has had a mid-credit or post-credit scene. But this will all change with Avengers Endgame. Endgame is the 22nd movie in the MCU and marks the first time that it will not have a teaser added onto the end. But apparently, there's something interesting still at the end of the credits, so if you would want to stick around, I definitely recommend it to see what it is. I'm going to, because it's just kind of tradition. You see a Marvel movie, you stay through the credits. That's what you do. So, in a recent interview, John Boyega stated that he thinks he will never play Finn again following the events of Rise of the Skywalker, which he describes as, quote, the war that just ends everything. This is interesting to me, because I don't know if he's just deflecting, so people will think that, well, Finn obviously dies, or if he's legitimately finished with Star Wars. I know with this new cast, outside of Oscar Isaac, they haven't really been treated the best, which is a complete understatement of the year. So it'll be interesting to see it all play out, and then see where the actors are after this trilogy is over. I have a feeling there will eventually be animations of some kind that will involve some of these characters, and I have a feeling that they'll all reprise their roles for the show if it were to happen. So, kind of piggybacking off of Avengers Endgame, there's been speculation and talk about already what's coming after Endgame, and there may be some answers out there. So if we go off of interviews and actually confirmed stuff, listings and stuff like that, we know that there's about 7 MCU movies planned after Avengers Endgame. The first one definitely being Spider-Man Far From Home. It's the only movie that is actually 100% confirmed. We've had trailers, it's already been filmed, and this one we see Peter Parker on a Euro trip with his classmates, where he will encounter Mysterio, portrayed by Jake Gyllenhaal. Number 2 is Black Widow. This one should have happened a while ago. The Black Widow solo movie is finally happening. Scarlett Johansson will reprise her role as Natasha Romanoff, also while producing the movie, which is set to be directed by Kate Shortland. Feige has talked about this project openly, so it's absolutely most likely going to happen, even though there hasn't been a formal announcement as of yet. But this movie is expected to begin production soon and will likely be the first MCU title in 2020. Another one is the Eternals. This is one Kevin Feige has talked about a little in interviews, meaning it's probably something that's definitely being worked on. The Eternals will be based on Jack Kirby's comic book of the same name and further expand the cosmic side of the MCU. Now, Black Panther 2 is also rumored. Marvel hasn't came out and said that we're for sure doing Black Panther 2, but it's most likely going to happen. The first Black Panther grossed over like $1 billion worldwide and won Marvel their first set of Oscars. And so my money would be on there being a Black Panther 2. Ryan Coogler is set to return to direct, with Chadwick Boseman reprising his role as Black Panther. So another one is Doctor Strange 2. So Doctor Strange was released in 2016, and for a more niche character, it did really well. Benedict Cumberbatch has since reprised his role in Infinity War and Thor Ragnarok. However, if they're going to be focusing on more cosmic side of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Doctor Strange is definitely a shoo-in for a sequel. Another one is The Hands of Shang-Chi. Now, I've talked about this previously on the podcast. This will be a more martial arts movie set within the MCU, and Destin Daniel Cretton is recently hired to direct the movie with a script written by Dave Callahan, who wrote the Wonder Woman script. So I definitely feel like that movie will be really interesting. Hopefully, we might be able to see some Iron Fist in that. Maybe. Nah, I'm not sure. But the last one is Guardians of the Galaxy 3. This one was put on hold. There was the whole thing with James Gunn. It probably would have started shooting this year had nothing happened with the movie, and negatively affected the movie. But he's back. He will first wrap up his filming of Suicide Squad 2 for DC, then will focus his efforts on Guardians 3. The only downside is we'll have to wait a while for that to happen. But with James Gunn back on board, using his script, it's going to happen the right way, which is the most important. There are plenty of other rumored projects, from a Blade movie to whatever they're going to do with X-Men and Fantastic Four, which leaves a massive amount of room for new characters. But I feel like they already have a fairly strong lineup with the ones they have now, so I feel like they should kind of keep striking while the iron's hot with these, and then once this wave of characters is done, start bringing in some more of the X-Men and Fantastic Four and stuff like that. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know, because like I said, the only one of these has been 100% confirmed, and that's Spider-Man Far From Home. But it'll be interesting and exciting to see what Marvel has up its sleeve. So lastly, I have I'm going to call it the Nerd Herders Netflix picks. So May is quickly approaching, and with that change of the calendar month comes changes to what is and isn't going to be on Netflix. So coming to Netflix in May includes Angels and Demons, Austin Powers 1 and 2, Dumb and Dumber, Gremlins, Scream, The Matrix Trilogy, Dark Crystal, Zombieland, Lucifer Season 4, Arrow Season 7, DC's Legends of Tomorrow Season 4, Supergirl Season 4, and Moonlight. Movies leaving are the Jaws movies, Eternal Sunshine, 16 Candles, Godzilla, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and a lot of James Bond movies. So, if you're wanting to watch an international man of mystery, if you can't catch James Bond in time before May gets here, then you can just watch Austin Powers, because I much prefer his movies anyway. So, this concludes this episode of the Scruffy Looking Nerd Herders podcast. This one was a little bit shorter. I didn't really want to dig too deep into stuff this week because I didn't want to come across any spoilers of stuff with Avengers Endgame. So I will be doing an Endgame review. I will post it on the blog. I will post it on socials, and I will keep it spoiler free. And then when I do my review episode, I'll do it how I did Captain Marvel. I'll do the first part with the spoiler free, and then I'll give you a warning and say, here on out is spoilers. If you don't want to hear it, stop now. So I will release that next week. That'll be next week's episode. And hopefully you guys will dig it. I hope you will. I'm sure you will. Of course you will. Yeah. Hey, that's me. But thank you so much for your support, guys. Please, if you like what you heard, go to iTunes and give a review, because that really helps me climb through the rankings on iTunes on the podcast. But be sure to like, follow, subscribe, review, all that good stuff. Share it with your friends, your family, your coworkers, in your Facebook groups, on Discord, everything. I'm on iTunes, I'm on Spotify, there's on Stitcher, Podbean, and YouTube. There's just so many ways to listen. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at SLNH Podcast. And be sure to pick up some merch. I will put a link in the doobly-doo. I just added a new t-shirt design. And it's kind of like a Avengers themed one. So scruffy looking nerd herders, but all Avengers is. Yeah, check it out. It's going to be in the link. And thank you so much for your reviews and your comments, your messages, your conversations. It really helps me grow the podcast, and it gets me interacting with you guys. And you guys help spark conversations and topics that I talk about on the podcast. And I appreciate that so much, because it's usually worthwhile stuff to talk about. So, everyone, this is Tyler from the Scruffy Looking Nerd Herders podcast signing off. And may the Force be with you.